Hello, everyone. This is Clint again, and I know that there's a lot of stuff going on Comicsgate wise that I could be talking about, but it seems like everybody's doing that on YouTube. So today I want to instead talk about comics, because ultimately that's what I love, that's what I enjoy, and because I'm going to be preparing a comic book from the ground up to publish, I wanted to sort of start with how do you get the idea for your comic book. So there's not one right way to do this. A lot of people, sometimes you'll just have a dream or whatever. You've got some idea you've been kicking around for a long time. Me personally, it takes some effort. Usually I'll have something that inspires me, but I'll really flesh it out and think about what exactly do I want to say in that comic? What kinds of things do I want to write? And so the comic that I'm going to be presenting to you has been one that I have thought about for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. And it's one I've made a couple of false starts on myself, just kind of playing around, fleshing out the idea. And this is the time I want to commit and get this done. So I'm showing you a picture here from Death Note. And Death Note is not technically what inspired me, but it re-inspired me to get back to this. I don't read a lot of manga, but something I really liked about Death Note was there's a psychological thriller element to it. And in all of my writing, I enjoy making things kind of creepy. I enjoy the thriller aspect in everything that I've written. That is definitely something I tend to lean toward. And so I really enjoyed that about Death Note. And then also the concepts of power and corruption that are seen there. So if you haven't read it or watched the anime series or anything, I would highly suggest it. I enjoyed it, and I'm not really one that usually enjoys manga, but this was really, really good. So it didn't inspire me, but it re-inspired me because some of these kinds of elements were stuff that I wanted to incorporate. So another thing, and this really did inspire me when I was conceiving the idea, was the game Jet Moto 1, Jet Moto 2, and yeah, from the 90s. And I remember playing this when I was in high school. I really enjoyed it. I'd race with my brothers. It was a lot of fun. And something I liked about it was just the flying motorcycle. These are racing motorcycles, and I wouldn't necessarily want to be racing motorcycles, but I wanted a story where there was some kind of flying element to it. I thought that's pretty cool. So that's something that inspired me, got me thinking some more. Another thing is Phil Noto. He's possibly one of my all-time favorite artists. I just think his work is beautiful, but there's also a very retro look to it. It's like 1970s aesthetics, 1970s illustration, and he just does a very good with women in particular, but with facial expressions and eyes. And so I liked just sort of the aesthetics of 1970s kind of look. Okay, another thing, back to video games, but Final Fantasy VII, and I thought about it, and I liked the idea of there being a city, this one big city, and there's corruption and there's underclass, and yeah, there's just sort of that element of fighting the power. Also, the aesthetics of just massive, large cities, it really made the characters feel small, and it almost feel like this big, giant task to take on. Yes, I liked something about that, the feel about it, the aesthetics. One more thing is Venice, and I promise I'm going to make sense of all of this, but this is, to me, how I come up with ideas. I'm thinking about a lot of concepts that I like, and then I start thinking about how they could be put together, and that to me can help me get a story. So Venice, I love the old architecture. I like that this is a city where boats, you don't have cars, you've got boats and canals between everything. It's such a different way to travel from point A to point B. That was very, very interesting to me, and so I wanted to incorporate something like that. Okay, so before we get to my specific comic book pitch, I first want to help out my fellow indie comics creators with a free ad. Sovereign is still open. Right now they've got $13,500 raised, so they are doing well. They're funded, but it is still open. And I'm just going to scroll down really quickly. You can see some of the art. Very, very nice art. Super professional. lots of detail, great colors. Yeah, if you want to support indie comics and this looks like something that might interest you, I'd suggest hopping over to Indiegogo, checking it out. It might be something that you want to pick up. Okay, so I've got all my inspiration. I've been letting it percolate in my brain, and I've come up with some ideas and some additional themes that I want to bring out. And usually when you're writing a book, and again, I come from the world of writing just fiction novels, prose, and so that's sort of my approach to things. It might be different in comics, but to me, you're storytelling, so it doesn't really matter all that much. But when you're selling a story, or you're trying to sell a story to a publisher, or to an agent, just to get an agent to help you sell your story, you'll have a query letter. And generally, the first line of your query letter, or the first paragraph, will look something like this. And disclaimer, I just threw this together for the video, so it's not perfect. It could definitely be better. Okay, so I don't have a title for this yet, so I'm just going to put title. That's something that I can certainly figure out later. So this story is an action thriller set in a city in the sky. When working class nobodies, Joanne and her brother Jonas mistakenly get a powerful orb that controls the conditions that keep the city afloat, including gravity, the corrupt ruling class sends a secret society of assassins after them. So I realize that's a mouthful, and that is, if you're writing query letters, that's kind of how they're supposed to be. You want to have a one sentence, and it's usually the when sentence. When this, that, then this, that. So it's a when, then kind of sentence, and that's how things work in, when you're submitting query letters for novels. Again, I think it's probably a little bit different for comics, but this is what I'm working with. So you'll see some of the ideas I've put in here is a city in the sky. I wanted things to feel a little creepy, but I also want it to just be fun. So I thought of some nice stuff there. I think I wanted to talk about family relationships, and I thought, I've got 3 kids, and when I first came up with this idea, I only had 2 kids, and I thought it was interesting how my son and my daughter just interacted. I had a sister, but I had more brothers. So to me, I interacted with my brothers more. And so it's really interesting to me how brothers and sisters work together and that sibling relationship. So I wanted to explore that here. Okay, now this is how I relate to Death Note, is that there's this massive bit of power. If you haven't read or watched Death Note, I don't want to spoil anything, but basically he gets the power to kill anybody by writing their name into a notebook. And that power can be corrupting. And so the power that I was looking at here is the power to basically keep the city afloat. The power to control the wind, the power to control gravity, the power to control light and darkness and temperature and all these things that would have to work just right for a city to stay afloat and for it to be a place where you could live. Okay, and then I didn't put it here up leading to it, but a secret society and a ruling class, and this is just power and corruption, corrupt city, and it sort of, I guess that's where the Final Fantasy VII elements come in. To me, that's interesting to me. It's kind of scary how there can be so much power, and not only that, but people that are so devoted to keeping that power that they're willing to do insane things. So those to me are interesting bits. So the themes I'm putting here are family, specifically siblings, and then power and corruption. I'm just going to focus, and those are the themes I'm going to be exploring in this. There's certainly other themes that I could bring out, but for the immediate story, the first graphic novel I'd like to do, this is what I want to hit. So personally, I like to think about the mood and how I want the mood to be conveyed. I like a mix between fun and creepy. Now, it's not a comedy, but by fun, I mean action and just a really intricate story, just fun stuff happening. And then I like the high stakes or just the evilness that is after the protagonist just being kind of off kilter and kind of creepy. And again, I always put that in my writing. I know it's a trope, but I love it. I love that kind of reading myself, and so I don't know, it's just part of how I do it. So target audience, this can often be overlooked, and I think it's important. If I was writing this book for mainstream publication, it would be probably rated teen or maybe teen plus. And, it would probably be written for boys, not because I don't like girls or I don't think they should be reading comic books. It's because I'm a boy and I feel like that's just the best story that I can write. I'm going to write something that stands out to me. So it has nothing to do with social justice or anything. In fact, I do have a female lead here, right? I've got a brother and sister. And so I will not be writing that female lead like you mostly see, like they're just basically a man that looks like a woman. I'm going to be writing her like a woman, like a female, and that is good and that is okay. All right. So when I say that I had a few false starts with this, or a couple false starts anyway, yeah, I mean it. I actually tried to design characters myself. I tried to do the art myself. This is one character turnaround of Joanna, and I can't, I really heavily copied just at least the proportions of character turnarounds that I found online. Tried to make the face and the outfit, and it might look okay from here. At least I thought it looked okay, but it's not. I got a lot of pretty sharp criticism from actual artists, but this was an interesting exercise. So I actually went ahead and designed a character, and not only that, I actually drew a few pages. Now, the story was different then that I would do it now. I'm definitely going to change things and make them probably more interesting to start off with. But I had Joanna here. There's the jet moto, flying through the sky kind of thing. My city looks awful. I had these big, platforms, when really what I wanted was Venice in the sky. So Venice, and then all of the vehicles just float or fly between buildings, and if you fall forever. Like, you are in Cloud City. So I thought this would be a cool concept. It took me way too long to do this page, even though I'm going to get a little bit closer for you. It's anybody that's a real artist would see this isn't great. There's a lot of problems with it. My lines look awful. My backgrounds are terribly uninteresting. My anatomy, I had to correct it several times. Her waist, how long is her torso and her waist, and I spent a lot of time doing the artwork that, that wasn't my thing. I love writing. I love art too, but I'm not an artist. I'm a writer. There's the next page. Tried to incorporate some heavy blacks. I'll zoom in here. So yeah, Jet Moto, she's coming in. There was going to be captions and dialogue. She was going to be some kind of a courier and picking up packages. And then she runs into the aforementioned secret society, having a meeting, beating someone up important. They turn around and see her peeking through the door. And then the next page, they're chasing after her. And Joanna is getting out of there, getting out of there, starting her flying vehicle and, getting out of there. And that's as far as I got. I showed these pages around, and it's really hard to be taken seriously when you've got art that doesn't look great. It's not consistent. Characters didn't look consistent panel to panel. I had a really hard time trying to draw characters in perspective, and so my panels ended up being very plain and straightforward. And it's just not where I want to focus my efforts. I wanted to just write a great story. So I'm rewriting this whole thing. This is, just some examples of what I did and some of the preparation I went through. I'm glad I did this because it helped me think through the story and the mood and everything like that. But I don't want to draw this. I want to find an artist. So those were my tips on how to come up with the idea for a story. There's no one way to do this. If you've got a way that you've got to figure out a story, that's great. Maybe you already have a story you want to do. Or maybe you're not sure and you're just asking, how do I get a story? Just think about it. And the more you think about it, the more you're going to start building connections and making something that's cool. And I do think it helps to write it out and see if you can make it make sense. So let me know in the comments below what you think. I'm going to be pursuing this comic and doing some more updates on it. But yeah, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. I could really use your help. We're still small. We're growing. But yeah, subscribe. That would be great. I'll see you next time.